good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on where you are in the world. So just quickly, my name is Johan Kritzinger. I go by JK, just a bit easier. I'm Grove's head of cybersecurity products, services, and implementations department, and essentially I head up the deliverable side of dSOC. So what I want to do today is just quickly run through a couple of differentiators in terms of what makes dSOC something different, something more appealing than what you would get with a standard SOC service. Now, with security for a long time, companies would opt for tech over resources, which obviously makes sense. It's a smart move. You need the tech in order to combat the actual threats out there, especially in terms of how AI is starting to change things. But resourcing human resource still plays an incredibly important part within the security environment of any organization. So what companies would do in order to rectify this is, go with an outsourced SOC. There's nothing wrong with that. But SOCs tend to be, very heavily process driven, often with cumbersome and large number of processes and playbooks. And obviously, as Chris alluded to, they're quite expensive as well. So when we created dSOC, our vision was to try and make things a bit smoother, a bit easier, a bit more agile. Chris said dSOC stands for Dark Trace SOC, which it does, but I kind of feel there's another way to look at that. And it's almost like we're trying to dSOC SOC. So we're trying to make it a bit more agile, a bit more quick, a bit more simple. Now, we've done this in a number of ways, and some of that is what I want to talk about now. And I think because of what we've built, we have created a SOC service without the mess, without the fuss, and for a lot cheaper than what you would get with other SOC services out there, provided, of course, that you use Darktrace. Now, a big point of Darktrace is its integration. Now, the reason I mention this is we have partnered with CrowdStrike a couple of months ago. Our primary motivation for doing that actually is because of the integration, the incredible integration you get with Darktrace. So essentially, if you have Darktrace and you have CrowdStrike, we can set up that integration for you, and it means that the EDR service information about the devices and what's running on there shows on Darktrace, which means the dSOC guys will be able to use that to enhance the service as a whole. So dSOC with Darktrace, absolutely brilliant, but the more stuff we can actually add to it in terms of enhancing the intelligence that Darktrace has, meaning it increases our visibility and understanding of things, the better the service will work. Now, all of this is essentially a really simple idea we had a couple of years ago. We've been building this role, we've been running it for quite a while, actually, very successfully. And we feel it's grown into a very efficient and valuable service for customers. Now, in terms of the differentiators, Chris, just move on a little bit on the slide there. All right, a little bit more. There we go. So just a couple of things that we feel that sort of made the service valuable and how we've made things a bit more interesting is our communication enhancement. So as Chris mentioned, one of the things we do is on a daily basis, we send you a daily report just detailing the sort of critical and potentially dangerous things that's been happening in roughly the last 24 hours, essentially since the last report was sent. This is all done by actual analysts. It's not an automated report. It's an analyst sitting there looking at everything that happened, investigating them, doing the triage, and then essentially noting all of this on a simple to understand tabular report that we will then email to the customer's security team on their side. One of the things that we specifically decided to do was to do this from the analyst's account who's actually doing the analysis. So you actually get an email from a human. It's not a no reply address or anything like that. It's not a system related thing. It's from the analyst who did your analysis. It's a simple email. If you have any questions, you want to jump on a call to essentially run through some of that stuff or do some deeper diving, you can simply reply to that and the analyst will action that. The second point there is personal relationships. Now, again, because it's so human based in terms of doing those investigations, the guys tend to start to build up a rapport with the actual security teams on the customer side. They also start to understand how the business works. I mean, a bank is obviously very different from a mine, but because we spend so much time in these environments, they start to understand, you know, X thing that they're seeing is definitely something that shouldn't happen because they're a bank, but it might be something that's admissible if it's a mine. So there's a bit more of that sort of personalized relationship and personal direct organization understanding that we see. Just move one more on, please. And then we are, well, it'll show in a second. We are true man 24/7 support. Now, the reason that I sort of focus on it being true manned 27 support is a lot of organizations do essentially business hours, and then they've got some failover phone service that kind of runs after hours that routes through to a standby engineer. Now, analyst, sorry. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with that. It works, you know, it does what it's supposed to do, but we've opted to have a full manned 24/7 follow the sun service where you will always immediately be able to speak to an actual person, be that mailing in, phoning in, whatever the case is. And it also means, obviously, that with the active monitoring service, as Chris mentioned, we will proactively contact you in the case of a critical alert. There is somebody there to actually do that. All right, just move on one more, please. Now, a big point with dSOC is essentially becoming an extension of your own team. Like I said, the personal relationships come into play, the communication enhancements come into play, that we essentially become part of your existing team. Excuse me. And a couple of things that we do to try and make things easier on your side is our belief in terms of prevention is always better than cure. Essentially, what that means is, as part of the service that we do as well, is we perform monthly health checks. It's a 24-point health check where we just essentially ensure that the system is running at its most optimal configured way, even if you made sort of network infrastructure changes. When we started with Darktrace, just before we started with dSOC, so we worked Darktrace for about 2 years before we started building the dSOC service. We noticed that customers would make changes to the environment. You know, they've had Darktrace now for maybe a year or two. They kind of forget that it's there. They make changes to the environment, and suddenly Darktrace, you know, is missing half of the environment, and obviously it only functions at like 25% the capacity that it's supposed to. And then customers then only realize this happened when they get breached, when they get that ransomware attack, or when that really important data gets exfiltrated. Then they realize, well, why didn't Darktrace stop this? Oh, let's have a look. Whoops. We just realized that we're actually only seeing a quarter or half of the environment that we're supposed to see, so something is broken. But by then, it's too late. The attack has occurred, the data is gone, it's already out in the world, you know, whatever the case is. So a very simple yet important thing that we do is those health checks. We've actually seen since we started doing that, we see a very definite decrease in critical alerts, because Darktrace is monitoring what it should, Respond is working the way it should, etc., etc. And we very quickly detect if customers made changes that has affected the service in a negative way, and then we will assist to resolve that. Just move on. Thank you. Now, something that I'm actually quite proud of is, because of the knowledge the guys have in Darktrace, and because we're so Darktrace focused, we've actually been able to use the system to do things for which Darktrace wasn't really designed to do. A very good example of this is a bank that we helped with a very serious fraud case, where we could use Darktrace and the level of intelligence that it has, the level of log retention, log detail that it saves, we were able to help with a very significant part of that fraud investigation, to the point where the bank could essentially take that information and take the case further and actually, catch the guy, to to put it simply. And I mean, there are other situations where we can do this as well. It is very much designed to protect you against malware and other network layer related breaches. But again, because of how strong that system is in terms of the log information and the knowledge on our side, we can potentially assist with stuff that Darktrace isn't even really designed to do. Just move on to the next one, thank you. And one more. Now, as I've said, we've been dealing with Darktrace for quite a while now. It's actually about 7 years now, since it's March 2024, so it's actually 7 years now. We speak to them daily. We're literally in the same Microsoft Teams groups. We're in the same WhatsApp groups. We literally speak to each other on a daily basis about various things. And something that I'm also particularly proud of is we've assisted with beta testing. So the dashboard that we use in terms to do the active monitoring emergency contact service is a partner-based dashboard called SOC in a Box. And we've actually been working very closely with the Darktrace developers in terms of providing ideas, testing it, explaining certain things that we feel would be useful for other partners, etc., etc. So very proud of our beta testing there. You can actually move on more just to show the last point there. As Chris mentioned, as I've mentioned, obviously we're very Darktrace focused. Everybody is has at the minimum the Darktrace analyst certification, because that's essentially what we need to do to run dSOC. But half of them have the emo one as well. Some other guys are working on the engineering one, and then we've got a couple of guys that are doing the simpler essentials one purely for the sake of just having that certification. So we really try to stay on top of any kind of additional things that come out on the Darktrace side in terms of products, and make sure that we get those certifications as quickly as we possibly can. And then just my final point on my side before I hand over back to Bianca. Chris mentioned this as well. We are currently the only company in the world that does Darktrace services to this level of sophistication. There are other partners. Generally, they tend to kind of do reactive support only, or they kind of add Darktrace to their full SOC service, and then it becomes immensely expensive. So we've very neatly found that sort of niche, that middle point of keeping the service cheap and economical, but still being able to provide you with a better service that you, the best service that you would get with, as opposed to with any other partner in the world.